So in the past couple of hobby vlogs, we've been kind of exploring and asking the question, what is the future of Games Workshop? And this idea of our community relationship with Games Workshop, where we love the narrative, we love the product, and from a very, very surface view, if you're looking outside of the hobby, you have to be impressed with what Games Workshop does. Production value of the models, number one, top tier, both on 40K and on the Age of Sigmar side. If you look at the presentation of the models, both in White Dwarf and in publications and online, the narrative, they show you the models, they've got other models behind there, they've got the background scenery, they've got the terrain. It pulls you in. The support of the books themselves, the artwork, the novels. It's 40K, Age of Sigmar 2, but we're just exploring 40K. It is very much a lifestyle. It's an amazing, amazing game. It's an amazing universe to explore. And more, I feel like, in a good way, I'm playing a role-playing game. I feel like I'm part of a much, much larger story, even though the battles are taking place on my tabletop. And what's interesting, Monday nights is 40K night. I'm playing 40K, or actually anytime I'm playing 40K. This past Saturday we played 40K. I'm just speaking for the U.S. I know I'm here on the East Coast, but much like in the narrative, the Imperium is at war. You're in a battlefield, and there are millions of other planets right now at this moment in the Emperor's domain, through the light of the Golden Throne, similar battlefields. Just think about that perspective physically. When you're playing tabletop right now, you're playing Warhammer 40K. Somewhere else, there are other 40K battles. There are other tabletop enthusiasts, other hobbyists, other community members physically fighting for the survival of the Imperium or working against it, perhaps for the Dark Gods, perhaps for the greater good, at the very same time. That's kind of an interesting concept. So we explore that, but then now as we jump into how does Games Workshop treat the community, you quickly realize it has some challenges. There are some things that they do which you understand. There are some things they don't do which you don't understand. And it's easy to look at some of their decisions and realize, look, yes, you want to make a profit, but this is such a blatant cash grab and you're disrespecting the community. And you ask the question, like, honestly, does Games Workshop really care about the community? This leads into this question. And we could say yes or no. Just what is the Games Workshop community? What is that community? When we throw out there community, what does that mean? And how does that begin to advance the game? And in my opinion, having played 40K not only for a long time, but gone through different phases of 40K, and all of them really had something to offer at the time, there was a common thread moving through all of them. And I believe that thread is what connects us as a community. So I got started with 40K, literally like basement battle reports. We were playing Dungeons & Dragons at the time. At the end of the summer, we were going to have a final battle against Tiamat. So we were going to the hobby store to buy D&D miniatures and fantasy miniatures to paint. So we were going to do a 3D dungeon, 3D battle. And my buddy Naps was like, Fritz, check this out. Orcs with guns. Orcs with guns. And I'm like, orcs can't have guns, bro. We look, right away we see 40K. We see Space Marines. We don't even know the rules. We don't know anything. We see the artwork. We're like, we're in. We were going to start buying D&D miniatures. We're buying this like Warhammer 40K thing. And on a side note, in that moment, you had to decide what you were going to play. Our friend Dom was also there. We had a friend Miguel. And Naps is like, I'm playing Space Marines. I don't know anything about them, but I see the power armor. I see the chainsword. This is what I'm playing. So in that moment, I'm like, do I do Imperial Army? I see the Eldar and pirates, and I see the swooping hawks, and I'm like, I'm in. I declare myself Eldar player. Miguel and Dom, they pick their armies. The irony being, it was sometime later when I'm painting my miniatures, and I realized that they're space elves. And I've got this like love-hate relationship with elves because I don't like elves. For the simple reason, it's all because of my cousin Eric. When we started playing D&D together, Eric was the DM, but he would also play a character in the game. And he played his character not as an NPC, but as an actual character. But he was also the DM, and he knew where everything was. And his character got the best stuff. And his character was an elf, and it was overpowered. So, like, I just associated that experience. So I'm like, I don't play elves in D&D. I've gotten past that. And right now we're actually getting ready to start a campaign, and I'm playing an elven druid. But at that time, at that moment of jumping into 40K, I was like, I don't want to play elves, but I'm playing these space pirates, and they have cool helmets, but you take the helmet off and you're a space elf. So we get past that. And every Friday, we would go over to Naps's house in the basement, just the four of us, sometimes the three of us, and we would play 40K. And the thread there in the moment, we had two kind of house rules going on. The first was if you lost the game or you took a beating, during the week you went back to Dragon's Den, you picked up some new models, you painted them secretly, and you brought them to the next game. And to be honest, the rules are always optional. Half the rules we didn't really even understand. Point value at the time, it didn't, we just like didn't even really play with points. It was just models. So like if you throw down a tank, I'm like, well, I got a tank and I throw down my tank. Or, you know, if you throw down this unit, okay, I throw down this unit. It was close enough. I mean, we played so many games it didn't really matter. We played 3 or 4 in a night. We'd play like teams. We would just play all sorts of stuff. We didn't really care about balance. But it was a fun rivalry where you would buy secret units and then you'd come back next week and throw down a dreadnought, you know, throw down a farseer, throw down a wave serpent, throw down these different aspects of the game. We also had an interesting house rule of if you lost the game. So we had our HQ, we had our commander, and then you always had a sub-commander. You always had like a lieutenant. And they could be killed in the game, but they would come back every other game. If you won the mission and your commander or sub-commander did not exit the table, because we would play, you could voluntarily exit the table, not with morale and things like that, or forced off the table, then your opponent would capture them and hold on to that miniature. And you had to win a battle next week. So it was fun to capture your opponent's miniature, and you couldn't use that HQ choice or that miniature in the next battle. You didn't have the abilities. So you kind of had to judge if the battle was kind of going crazy. You take your, you know, at the time, your major hero and get him out of there. You keep your minor hero for the leadership buffs and abilities because you'll let him be captured and move from that perspective. The thread in that moment was just having fun. We felt like we were exploring this grimdark universe together that we only even remotely half understood the rules. We were having fun together. We were laughing. We were rolling dice during the week in between games. I'm like, I got to get this unit painted. I got to get this whirlwind up and running. I've got to get this. I switched over to Space Wolves at some point. It was a friendly, fun competition. So I stopped playing 40K for a little while, and just we move on. You go away to school. Things change. I've got my 40K stuff. Some of it I had traded away. And I just, for whatever reason, think like, you know, new editions around. I'm going to jump back in. And this was 4th edition 40K. Look up online, 40K clubs in the area. And I find out literally the Battle for Salvation Gaming Club is like right down the street. If I wasn't lazy, I could walk to it. That's how close it was. And literally, they had just started the club. It was maybe like they're 5 or 6 months old in a rec hall. And I was really, really excited. So I emailed the president of the club, and I'm like, hey, can I stop by, play 40K? I go on that Monday night. And it was an interesting experience because this was a real club, right? This was a step up. I love playing basement battle reports. That was like 2 or 3 years of playing. I was a little bit apprehensive. I mean, there are social aspects now. Hey, you're walking into a club of, I don't know, 5 people, 3 people, 20 people. They all play 40K from different aspects. You know, where do I rank in there? Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? What's it going to be like? What if they're not friendly? What if it's a small group and they don't really want outsiders? I admit that wherever you are socially, like that's a big, big step to do that. So I arrive at the club, and I can remember it like it's yesterday. There's these 2 giant, big red doors to the rec hall. So you went into this like hallway, this stone hallway, very Gothic, very like Imperium. You walk down this hallway, and there's these two giant red doors, and you can see the light underneath the doors. And I pause for a moment, and I think like, okay, if I walk in here, I'm in. I could go home. I could say I'll see you next week. And I had a little bit of apprehension, but I could hear in that moment, and this is leading into this thread, this community thread. I could hear in the moment people just having a good time. I could hear some dice rolling. I could hear the familiar, like, yes, I made that save, or like, oh no, my tank got blown up. And I figured I'd push in. So I opened the doors, I walk in there, and immediately was greeted by some amazing friends at the time. Bishop, and I don't know if you remember, Jaquan, you were the first guy that I played 40K with. New to the club, Bishop set up a game. I had some Space Marines that I brought. You had your Tyranids. That was the pull into the community. And both you guys really made me feel like 10 minutes in. It's not even like the end of the night. This is awesome. 10 minutes in with your inclusion made me feel like, hey, I've been gaming here forever. Like, that's amazing. So now jumping in a club, and it turns out there's like 30 players, all different armies, and it was like a 40K dream. The common thread through that, we played in tournaments. We played in big games together. We would have paint nights together. This was now 40K on a much, much larger scale. The thread was we were rolling dice, having fun, and the continuity of when I was playing 40K or involved in 40K, I was with my friends. But then during the week, while I was working on my stuff for 40K, terrain, new miniatures, actually paint some stuff, I felt like, wow, wait till they see this next week. Wait till I bring this to the table next week. The next aspect of 40K, which kind of leads me to where I am today, through YouTube, through interacting with other clubs on the tournament scene, and just kind of networking over the years while I play 40K locally, I also have a chance to travel to other clubs or meet other friends. And what's amazing about that, every time I meet new players, because we have this common thread of we're creating memories in 40K. We love 40K. We're painting our miniatures. We're having fun. It just felt like we've always been friends. It just felt like I could pop in anywhere. Or when friends would come to visit our club and play, those illusions of time, those illusions of space, those illusions of this is meeting someone new. It was like literally meeting a battle brother. It was literally like going back to realizing that wherever you're playing 40K in the moment, right now, this vlog, we're listening to it, wherever you are, there's a tabletop 40K battle going on somewhere. And we're a part of that community. And it's been that thread that when I watch some of the things that Games Workshop does, where I just kind of scratch my head and say, look, I want you guys to make money. I do, because the more money you make, the bigger kits you'll make, the more 40K stuff you'll make, the more I'll have fun playing. But even when it's blatant cash grabs and you do things that are just like, shut down YouTubers or take things in a direction or make something a limited release and it sells out in 2 minutes, all those things that happen or don't happen, or things that I expect to happen or I would like to have happen, my projection of 40K on a company that of course is there for profit, it's the community that pulls me back. And it's these threads of friendship that I've been able to make. And it's these threads of friendship that even carries out here on YouTube, watching other battle reports, watching other presentations. I'm literally on the other side of the world, but in that moment, I'm sitting right there at your gaming table, and I might be working on a miniature behind my computer screen. I might be painting, might be looking at some units, but I'm connecting with you. I'm there and experiencing that 40K together. So even that on that online community perspective, some of us have big clubs, some of us small clubs, some of it might be just you and your friend playing. The thread through the community online, let's call that virtual, I guess. The thread locally, I guess it's like being part of a secret society that's not really secret, but is secret to join because you kind of got to know about the Imperium and know about the narrative and the lore. For me, that's what the community is. And that's what keeps things moving forward and continuing things despite all the machinations of Games Workshop.